Are you ready for phenomenal thought leadership from the most well-respected leaders in industry? Join us for stellar conversations and sound advice from trailblazers who have a passion for excellence. Learn best practices that will catapult the culture of your company into a new level of greatness. Welcome to Great Companies, Great Leaders. Your host is Christine Gannon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Great Companies, Great Leaders. I'm Christine Gannon, your host, and I am super excited to have my super good friend, colleague extraordinaire, Penny Babb, with us today. We're going to talk to Penny. Hi, Penny. Welcome.
Hi, Christine. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. So a little bit about Penny and her background. So Penny is the 2020-2021 president of Soroptimist International of the Americas. She's been a Soroptimist in Arizona for 23 years, and she's held leadership positions in her club, in her region, and the Federation. Soroptimist was formed, if you haven't heard of it, because before I got involved, I hadn't heard of Soroptimist. It's like the best kept secret, honestly. So Soroptimist was formed in 1921 in Oakland. And an interesting fact is that from the Latin word, it means best for women. And it was formed at a time when women really weren't permitted to join service organizations, which was not in our lifetime, but that's mind-boggling to me that women were not allowed to do that. Soroptimist is a global volunteer organization that provides women and girls with access to education and training that they need to achieve economic empowerment. As president, Penny oversees a federation with over 30,000 members and supporters in 21 countries and territories, with the mission to provide women and girls with access to education and training. She's married to an amazing man and has one son who's also equally amazing, and they've all served their communities in law enforcement careers. So a little bit of background about Penny. She's from the United States, where she was raised in Illinois as a farm girl, but she's made her home in Phoenix for the past 30 years. She earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice studies, sociology, and African American studies, and she has a master of educational leadership. She became a deputy sheriff, AKA badass, with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office in Arizona, where she met her husband of 34 years. Their son is also serving in law enforcement as a criminal prosecutor of gang-related crimes. Penny retired in 2009 after 25 years of service in areas such as major felony investigations, patrol and detective division commander, and training commander. 3 years after retiring, Penny became the director of law enforcement operations at Glendale Community College here in Arizona, managing their policy academies, advanced training for law enforcement officers, firearm classes for citizens, and dispatcher training courses. And she retired again in 2020. So Penny, after 10 years of joining Soroptimist, she was elected to the Golden West Regional Board and became the 2016 to 2018 governor, overseeing 45 clubs in 4 states. She is a tremendous leader, if you haven't gathered that by now. She was elected to Soroptimist International of the Americas Board of Directors 2018 to 2020, and she's currently serving on a task force to develop the Northern Philippines region. She was elected as Soroptimist International President-elect for 2019 and 2020, and she's presently the current president from 2020 to 2021, where she oversees clubs in 21 countries. She's passionate, obviously, about Soroptimist, serving her community, volunteering at church, and experiencing different cultures, and she's especially passionate about helping women achieve their dreams. Penny and her family also love to travel. In the last few years, they visited South Africa, Israel, Jordan, Japan, Germany, and the Philippines. Oh my goodness, I'm so honored to know you, number one. Number two,
so silly.
Number two, seriously. Number two, how did you get here? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, I wish I could say that it was planned from day one, but not really. So back in Illinois, I always was fascinated with law enforcement. I hate to age myself, but Charlie's Angels was a big thing. And when I was in high school, and I just thought that would be tremendous. Of course, I didn't think that I had the skills or the abilities to be a police officer, but I still wanted to pursue something in criminal justice. And so I went to college and I pursued that element of sociology, was the criminal justice component. And then I did a few interns to see what area that I would really like. And then I decided that I wanted to move out to Arizona. That's a whole different story, but I applied for the sheriff's office. And quite frankly, I was thinking I'm going to do that to get some experience in the interview process. And I didn't actually realize they had hired me until they gave me the academy date to start. So I hate to say I kind of fell into the career that I loved, that I became so passionate about with the career. But I kind of did. And I think maybe there was a little guidance, divine guidance in that, because I met my husband there. I had a fantastic career that I just loved. It was different every day. And about 4 years into it, working in patrol and detectives, I decided to put my money where my mouth is. And I had some ideas. I had some goals. I thought I might help in some areas with the organization. So I tested for sergeant, and then lieutenant, and then captain, and I was promoted each time. So of the 25 years I spent in that role, it was probably about a third in patrol, a third in detectives, and then a third in the admin training area. And I loved every minute of it, but I learned new and different things in each one of those areas. And then around that same time, a friend of mine who worked at the sheriff's office said, "Hey, would you like to go to this meeting with fun women and wine and cheese?" And I said, "Of course, who doesn't want to go there?" Well, it was disguised as a Soroptimist recruitment event. And when I got there, I didn't even know how to pronounce Soroptimist. I didn't know what they did, but as promised, there were fantastic women who were passionate about women and girls and education. And so I signed up to be a member at that moment, and got myself involved in all of those areas that you can volunteer for Soroptimist. And then once again, I just had that little part of me that was like, if I have ideas and I want to make things better, in my opinion, you need to step up and say, I'm really passionate about this. I have some ideas. If you agree with my ideas, I'd love to serve as a leader or in charge of some areas. And so I started, well, first of all, I went through the club levels, which included president of the club. And then I went to the region level where I spent 10 years. And that was just learning the skills, learning more about Soroptimists. And the top level in the region is we call governor. And so it is kind of overseeing the work and being a liaison between the Federation and the individual clubs. And for us, that's in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. And so I stepped up to do that role. And when that was complete, a few people said, "You should run for Federation board." And I of course was like, I would never be elected, because that's 20 countries, 6 languages, women from the just fantastic, amazing women that really have a passion for women and girls in their own communities. And of course, with 20 countries in South America, Central America, North America, and the Pacific Rim, there are so many needs that are different than there are here in Peoria or here in the United States. And I was elected to the board. And then, of course, some women were like, "You should run for president." And so I did that too, with the same expectation that I wasn't sure if my training and my expertise would translate to that. And apparently it did. I got elected. And oh my gosh, it's for a president-elect position and then 1 year as president. And of course, we have an executive director, CEO, and we have professional staff that assist. But you're in charge of the board and you set the direction for the organization, the strategic plan, approval, all those type of things. And it's been a fantastic year. I've learned great things and challenges all along the way. I've met some amazing women. The passion in my organization has only grown. And now I'll be done with the president role in about 2 weeks. And then I'm looking forward to just centering my adventure and service right back here in Peoria, Arizona. So, and I know, Chris, you have supported us in many of our events and been a speaker and a panelist for our region events. And so I just want to thank you for that as well.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. It's such a great organization. And I'm listening to you talk about that and thinking how many really important nuggets are there for women thinking, because it's proven there's studies, and I don't want to lie, so I'm not going to say a statistic that I don't know, but I have read it numerous times, where women don't apply for jobs where they feel unqualified, but men absolutely will. They'll look at a job description and go, I probably have 50% I'm going to apply. Whereas women are like, I don't check all the boxes and I'm not going to apply. And so I think your story is such a great example of women just going for it. Just apply. What's the worst thing that can happen? You're just in the same place that you are right now.
It's just like every other service. When you don't ask, the answer is always no. And when you try, maybe you make a connection that works for something down the road. Maybe it doesn't work right now, but at least there's that little nugget out there of some kind of network or connection. And so I do have a fear of failure and being turned down, but I also just go for it anyway. And I think that's, if you want to take anything out of that little story I told, it probably is just try. If it's something that you're going to think in a few years, I wish I would have, I don't want that regret. So.
Yeah. I love what you said. You, like everybody else on the planet, has a fear of failure, but you still did it anyway. So it's getting yourself up to that point where you're like, doesn't matter. I'm going to miss out if I don't at least try, you know?
Right. Exactly.
So all throughout the bio that I read and everything that you shared, it's obvious that you're a strong leader. So talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what do you think are some key characteristics of a really good leader?
Oh, there are so many leadership characteristics, and to pick one would be almost impossible because they interact, and some characteristics come naturally, some you have to develop, which are entirely possible. And especially as you get experience, again, stepping forward, trying something. If you fail, you try it a different way. If you succeed, then you learn from that and go forward. But I think the best, probably the characteristic that I have learned to appreciate for myself is to try to be self-aware, to know yourself and your values. And even those change with experience and education or knowledge. When you understand where you are and why you act and react the way that you do to certain ways, helps you recognize your strengths and your challenges. It lets you know that you set yourself up and your team for success, and you feel confident about your decisions, and you know where you need assistance and you seek that out too. One thing that I learned was I don't have to be an expert in everything. That's part of building a team is you be self-aware, you provide what's necessary to go forward. You have a strong vision with expectations and accountability, and being empathetic to the people that work with you, following that model. Those strengths and challenges and the help that you need become more of a team effort and less about whether or not you're successful just as a leader. So I will say that I'm a very different leader today than I was, in my early years. And most of that is experience, of course, but it's mostly about learning every day and embracing what you learn, allowing yourself to be who you are, not trying to mimic someone else, giving yourself a break, and finding mentors, both good and bad, because you learn equally from both. And as your confidence grows, all of your leadership grows. So I didn't really answer that question.
You did. No, you did. In so many ways.
Okay.
No, you did. And I think you're pulling out so much in terms of being authentic, right? Leaders, great leaders to me are authentic. That means all the things you just said, they're self-aware, they're in growth mode all the time, realizing they don't know everything and they can't be the expert on everything. They're surrounding themselves with mentors and sponsors and people who do know other pieces and parts to fill in those gaps, and realizing those gaps don't mean that you're less than. It just means that you can't know it all. right? We wouldn't need each other, obviously, if we
Exactly. Exactly. And what fun would that be? How do you learn if you're never bringing somebody into your area that knows something better than you or something new that you don't know?
Right. So what's a leadership lesson you've had to learn the hard way, do you think?
Oh, well, a most recent one just pops into my head and it won't leave. So I might I might as well share that. So
It's just between us, Penny. It's just the two of us.
in a recent role, I had some influential women not happy about some situations, and they came to me challenging some decisions that had been made. And I finally realized, and this may sound similar to the response I had before, but I finally realized that the best path forward for me was to listen to each one of them, to be open and receptive, to share the facts and the information that they were missing that is part of the reason why they were upset. And in my personal life, I pray for clarity of who I am and strength to act as my own, what I know my creator would want me to do. And so I seek advice from mentors and ultimately just be myself. And so I did all of those things, shared some information, talked to them about what would make the situation better, those type of things. And quite frankly, the issues were resolved. Some positive new procedures were adopted, and the situation actually became better for everyone. And we identified some stuff organizationally that were positive changes, so that the clarity and the transparency and the civility between all of the participants was improved. And so that was a difficult thing or a hard lesson to learn, but it came right back to what I knew all along, but I didn't give myself enough confidence or strength to recognize it, is that I know how to handle situations because I know how I want to be handled or how I wanted to be treated. And it's as simple as that. You listen, you learn, you share what the facts are, and you come together for solutions. And as I look back at my career now, I think I did a version of that. It just wasn't brought as home, apparently, as it was recently. And so I think that's how I've always been. And what other advice can you give than to handle things the way you feel is true to who you are and your values and how you would want to be treated. And ultimately, the solutions usually are much better than what you would have come up with yourself when you include the people that actually disagree with you or have some challenges that they want you to solve or to change the way you are to meet their needs. They realize that wasn't an answer either. So.
Okay, we could talk about that one for 20 days straight, but we won't.
We could.
You bring up, so many good points. One, it takes maturity to do that. It takes a level of maturity to accept that your way isn't the only way. And even though you might be a leader, keeping that open mind in terms of listening to others' values, listening to others' perspectives, listening to others' perception of what's reality and maybe fact for them. There's a lot of places I could find facts today, and they're not all facts, right? So it takes a lot of humility and maturity to be able to do that. The other thing that I love is collaboration. You brought that out in terms of bringing people together from both sides. What a different world we would be living in today if we really embraced collaboration and truly listened, as well as had problem solving and solution and critical thinking ingrained into all of us in terms of we're all leaders. We're leaders of our own life, even if we're not president of Soroptimist or we're not president of a consulting company or we're not CEO of a bank. We all are leaders in our own right. And so, using what you've learned, you said it so beautifully, using what you've learned your whole life, implementing that in different situations to find solutions, right? That's the goal, to find solutions, not to be right, but to find solutions. And sometimes it requires a compromise, right? Hearing both sides.
Sometimes we do just want to be right.
Yeah. We're what?
We're human after all. We want to be right, but
yes.
I'm just kidding you.
I know. I hope the next gen that gene comes out. We don't have to be right. We have to live together on this planet, right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Okay, so couple of last questions for you, Penny. Who has had a tremendous impact on you? I know a lot of people, I'm sure, throughout your career, but someone that really stands out that's had an impact for you.
Well, again, it won't leave my mind, so I'm just going to say it. And I hope people don't think this is just a love fest, but you have been a positive mentor.
Not allowed.
And I do actually have a lot of mentors. I mentioned before that I do have mentors that I seek out that I don't always agree with, because I want to learn why we're different in certain areas. And so I do have mentors that I respect that I don't always agree with, but I do use them to help me learn. And sometimes that conversation is positive, and sometimes I walk away going, no, I still don't agree with you, and go forward. And then I find mentors who have experienced something similar, or they have more experience, or they know something about maybe the person that you're having an issue with, or the challenge of the organization in some way, that you don't have to invent the wheel. There are other people who have handled similar tasks, and the process is the same, whether it's A or it's Z. When you have those kind of processes in your mind of how to go through the steps for problem solving, it doesn't really matter what the problem actually is, as long as you go through the steps to get towards a solution and then have backup possibilities as well. So I've learned a great deal from a variety of mentors. And like I said, probably as much or more from people that I seek out that I know that I don't necessarily agree with all the time. Because I love to be in situations where there aren't just yes people, that the pros and cons of every situation, because I think that's where you make the best decisions, is people who are passionate about one way, people who are passionate about the exact opposite. You could see why both of them are passionate about both, and then you find a solution that may incorporate both, or maybe somewhere in the middle. So mentors is one of my advice to anybody, is find mentors. Again, you don't have to start from scratch. You know, there's other people out there that have experience that can help you through the process, and you are not alone. You're not isolated. So don't act like you are.
Right.
Isolated right now in Zoom.
But you know, LinkedIn is a great place. I've had several millennial women reach out and want to be a part of a foundation that I co-founded, the Foundation for Female Equity and Inclusion. And I've had women reach out asking to support. And it's interesting because they've asked me, you know, about their careers. Like, we're so isolated. How are we going to grow? And LinkedIn is a great place to find mentors. So I know, you know, early on in my career, it was challenging to find mentors. And I would ask people, how did you find your mentor? I was like, well, Sally, you know, I knew Sally, so I asked Sally. But if you don't know people where you aspire to be, you know, use your resources online. We live in this highly technology charged world, right? So don't be afraid to reach out on LinkedIn to someone you admire, just to say, would you be my mentor? Could we have a 15-minute virtual coffee chat? All people can say is no.
And most people are very humble and are complimented by that.
Yes, I agree. So Penny, for your last question, what advice would you give to leaders today? They're facing so many challenges. What advice would you give to them?
So there are many challenges, and they've especially been highlighted over the last year while we're all trying to lead through crisis. One of the biggest is staying focused on the vision and the mission while maintaining morale. I know that's a combination of a few challenges, but people are facing a lot of personal challenges. They have minimal personal contact. They feel isolated. They have Zoom fatigue. Not your Zoom podcast. I'm not saying that. They have lifestyle changes for their home that used to be an oasis away from work, now also involves work. and then your children are there, all your responsibilities are there. So there's really no break. And so a leader needs to be creative, set up some way to have feedback, be self-aware, of course, on not only what you need to get to go forward, but just watching the little boxes of your Zoom coworkers and seeing what's going on. Maybe reach out separately to see if there's anything that you can help them with. Helping those teammates to be accepting of the change, because at some point, hopefully we'll go back to real in-person meetings. And that's a big change from what you've been used to doing for this last year and a half or so. And then the other thing is, I think the term now is called silos, where you're working in just with your manager and your team, and you're not really having the experience of looking at the entire organization or being part of decisions coming out of different elements of the entire organization. So to make sure that everybody knows how the decisions are made and how those affect the entire organization, those are all challenges that leaders are working on now. But the biggest one is, if you stay focused on your vision and your mission, you combine your core values with that to help you stay on track and try your best to maintain morale, even having some silliness involved in your meetings every now and then. I think that's the challenges we're facing, and maybe a couple of the solutions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know companies that jump on their Friday Zoom call and they do games. They play like Hangman, or they play Pictionary, or they play something to keep everyone engaged. And there's no business done. It's just literally, we're going to all play a game together just for a break. And I think, to your point, it keeps morale at some level. So Penny, Babb, thank you so much for being with us today. So grateful for all of your tremendous advice, and congrats on your recent position as you transition out. I know you've left Soroptimist International a better place just by your influence. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me today, and Christine for doing this for other people. It's fantastic. It's just who you are. You reach out into other people's lives and you provide them solutions and networking. And that's why I love you, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Penny.
Brightworks Consulting hosts this podcast and YouTube channel to spotlight the leadership around the world that is changing lives. Brightworks offers a myriad of consulting services in the public and private sector, to include diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions for any size company. You can find us at www.brightworksconsulting.com. We're honored to have Best Companies AZ as a presenting sponsor for this podcast. Best Companies AZ is your #1 source for regional employer branding. You can find them at www.bestcompaniesaz.com.